The format for this meeting is a 10-minute speaker, our secretary's announcements, a coffee and snack break, and then our main speaker. Our first speaker for tonight is Kerry.
There we go. Good evening. My name is Kerry. I'm an alcoholic. I want to say thank you to the group for the invitation. Thank you to my sponsor, Wayne. And thank you to my sponsee brother, Alex, for being here. My sobriety date is October 21st, 2009. So I just turned sweet 16. Wayne is my sponsor. I was a binge drinker from the age of 14 to 28. I got drunk for the first time when I was 14. Definitely had what it talks about in our book, phenomenon of craving or allergy to alcohol. It comes in, it creates a craving for more. It started off with this much white Zinfandel wine and this much orange soda, and I was the inventor of the wine cooler. And it ended with, this much Zinfandel wine and like this much orange soda to try to evade the parents. But I did not drink that much during those 14 years. But when I did, I got drunk. Bachelorette parties, you could count on me to be extremely drunk, weddings, etc. I was a very good student. Some might say neurotic. I had a boyfriend in college. He was from Russia. And he said I reminded him of the kids that he grew up with in the Young Communist League. I was like, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, running around, doing all these things, sort of doing everything that I was supposed to be doing. And I thought that was a compliment until I remembered that he was a refugee from the Soviet Union. Anyway, I went to law school, same thing. And when law school was over, that was it. There was no more school. That's the highest you can do in that profession, and that was that. I made a friend named Mark, and he was really like my drinking sponsor, and he really, he taught me a lot, and he poured me bourbon and ginger ale, and I was 28 years old, extremely tightly wound. And I got what talks about in our literature, that sense of ease and comfort that comes at once from taking a few drinks. And I really relaxed. And that was when my drinking really took off. I have two alcoholic grandfathers, stories, grandfather coming home, wake my mom up in the middle of the night, 2 a.m., make me a sandwich. I had a lot of rules about drinking, and my parents were quite strict Catholic. And so I had all these rules about a lot of things, but including drinking. And that 28 years old, living on my own, got my degree, I'm all good. Those rules just went right out the window. And it was amazing. Those first 3 years were truly amazing. My love life was still a disaster, consisting of one-night stands or incredibly intense relationships that were made up in my head. I don't know if you have these relationships. They're very pleasant until you run into him again and he ignores you, and then it's like utter depression. This was like the 90s and the 2000s, and I used to get those women's magazines, and it would say, how long should it take you to get over a relationship? And the rule of thumb was half as long as you were in it. So if you were in a 1-year relationship, give yourself 6 months to get over it. Me, I would be in a 1-week relationship, and it would take like a year to get over it. Anyway. I'm still single, by the way. No, the steps have helped with that. They really have. So, 3 years, it was amazing. And I took to it I took to drinking and the sort of drinking life and drinking culture really well. And after about 3 years, things took a turn for the negative. They got more negative every single year. I drank for 8 more years after that. During those 8 years, I knew something was wrong with me, and I was definitely seeking an answer. I sought an answer in therapy. I sought an answer in quitting therapy. I definitely took a trip and not took a trip, like it talks about in our book. I love self-help books. I would go to the bookstore and just like diagnosis by reading the book spines, just like, yeah, that, and then pick up that book. It has like a very, dark description of your problem, and then the hopeful checklist about all the things that you could do to like overcome this problem. Anyway, I fell for it every time. I got a book on boundaries. I got a book called The Anger Trap. That didn't work, and I actually got sent to anger management classes by my job twice. So I got The Anger Trap for Women. If I could apply like a gendered approach to my situation, that might be better. And in 2009, I got a book called Take Back Your Life with Outlook. And it wasn't Take Back Your Life with a sunny outlook on life. It was Take Back Your Life with Microsoft Outlook. Which, if you don't know, is a computer program. And it was like, if you could just organize everything, thank you. If you could just organize everything, then you would be okay. I was not okay. I was depressed. I was anxious. I used to, I was working as a lawyer. I was a big shot, and I was in meetings, and my throat was like so perpetually dry that I would bring like an entire bag of hard candy, and the crinkle, like open it, and at the end of the meeting, 1 hour meeting, the whole candy would be gone. There would be this pile of, cellophane wrappers. And I thought it might, like, I had these inklings that it might be mildly inappropriate, but then I'm like, I have a medical condition, what can I do? I was on probation at my job for my outbursts. I was drinking 6 to 7 days a week, 5, 10, 15, 20 drinks. The reason I know that is because I started doing a program called Moderation Management. I found it on the internet, and that program, step 1, it has steps. Step 1 is count your drinks for 30 days. And I did. I was super faithful. And anyway, that's how many I was drinking. And also, I found out later that in that program, you count your drinks and you measure them also, and 3 ounces is some sort of like reasonable drink. This is a 20-ounce water bottle. This is 1 to me. And so anyway, 10, that's what I was doing. I read a book about depression from the Mayo Clinic. It said people don't know if people drink because they get depressed or if people drink because they are depressed. And for some reason that made sense to me, and I went on to step 2 of moderation management. This was about 8 months later. And step 2 is don't drink for 30 days and think about why you drink. So I did that and nearly went insane, and eventually ended up before an alcohol counselor in Washington, D.C., where I was living. And, we have a principle in AA of cooperation with the professional community, and cooperate, never criticize. And thank goodness for that, because that woman with all her degrees, she didn't take my insurance. It was $250. That's partly why I went, she's prestigious. She suggested that I go to Alcoholics Anonymous. I went that night. I met people who were, armed with facts about their condition, really healthy 12-steppers, took that job seriously. They were all men. The oldest was 25 years old. I was 3 weeks shy of my 40th birthday. I owned 1 pair of pants and 5 shirts. All the shirts had pizza stains on them from ordering pizza after I got home from the bar. My hair was 1 inch short all the way around, and I wore men's hair product. I was morbidly obese. My knees did not work. My hair was falling out. And they didn't care about any of that. They just saw me as a suffering alcoholic. And they didn't send me off to a meeting over there where the women drank wine out of brown paper bags or anything like that. They took their job seriously, and they saw me as a suffering alcoholic, and they took on my case. I got a sponsor, started to work the steps, and had what happens here, a spiritual awakening, and, get to continue to apply the principles of Alcoholics into my life. And over the last 16 years, all those problems that I came in with have gone away, really for the most part. Not depressed, got off my medication, not anxious, can get through a whole meeting without hard candy. Like right now, look at me, I'm doing it. and got a job back, got a career back, was able to start working for myself. That enabled me to move out here to California. I have a really, really cushy, sweet life today. For anybody who's new, I just encourage you to jump in, get a sponsor, get a home group, work the steps, especially getting to that last one where we help other people. It's definitely a formula for living that has really worked for me, and rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Thanks again for the invite.
Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, our main speaker will share his experience, strength, and hope with us. Please join me in welcoming Wayne.
Wayne Butler, alcoholic. Well, let's try that again. I'm Wayne, alcoholic. Wayne. Jesus Christ. I need a big book. Thank you. Mine's in my car, keeping it sober. I want to thank Keith for inviting me to come out here and share tonight. Thank Kerry for coming out. And my knucklehead sponsee, Alex. I know it's not very nice. Should I use that line? I'm doing the best I can. It's been an interesting holiday. Everybody had a good Thanksgiving so far? I was very thankful Thursday. As I am, that was my 49th sober Thanksgiving. Much better than my first one. And I'll tell you why. We had the worst snowstorm in the history of Illinois. That weekend I got sober. And I was the youngest guy by 40 years, which meant I shoveled out all the cars of the silver hairs. And that's all they were. Not only did I do that, my sponsors didn't have me do service at their house. So I got to go shovel the walks and driveways of all the members of my home group. I'm glad there was only 9. I used to not tell that because I liked the drama. My sobriety date's 8th of November, 1977. I've had no booze, pills, powders, potions, or lotions that alter my emotions from that day to this. I do have a history of dating mind and mood-altering women, though I always get blamed. They would say the same of me if you got to talk to them. Just to get this out of the way, I was psychiatrically institutionalized. I did not believe I was alcoholic when I came here. I had 21 psychiatric diagnoses, 18 by the time I met you, 3 more as I went to meetings for a little while as not an alcoholic. And I was really confused. And if anybody's newer and you're still baffled and you're still confused about this thing called alcoholism, I personally understand that. I'm sure other people do too. But I was psychiatrically institutionalized 17 times. I was in the Watertown Insane Asylum, criminal insane side, 14 times. To be fair, I self-signed in 4 times because that's where my girlfriend lived. That's a true story. Psycho Sober Sybil was her name. She had so many personalities, like dating somebody new every day, and found out she was a diagnosed sociopath who murdered her whole family. So she was never getting out. She heard there was a killer psychopath on the ward. She had to meet me. So she shared her sociopathy with me. I shared my psychopathy with her, and it was love at first sight. And back in those days, it was the era of one flew over the cuckoo's nest, literally. You could do anything you want on that ward as long as you didn't hurt the staff. That's just the way it was back then. And we took full advantage of that. We were so much in love. So it was worth going back to see her when I get lonely. So how can I possibly be an alcoholic? Because what you don't understand, I thought, was that the only time I feel any sense of decency in me is when I'm drinking. which is really interesting, don't you think? Alcohol is not supposed to do anything except depress me, scientifically. I know the science of ethanol alcohol. Sometimes I wish I didn't, because I apparently get into some controversies with people just because I know the science of ethanol alcohol. But I was baffled by alcohol because scientifically it's designed to do one thing: depress me, sedate my central nervous system. That's it. But it had a contrary effect on me. While it was sedating my body, it was uplifting my mind. It's not a stimulant. That's the unusual effect Dr. Sokol was talking about. This ability to see things that aren't really there in me. I would take a few Budweisers and I'd get so good looking I couldn't stand it. I drink a few Budweisers and I get smart as all out. I drink a few Budweisers and I know everything. I can talk to girls. I didn't even know sex meant two people till I met my first Budweiser. I was baffled by it. I saw what I didn't know was alcoholism in my dad. I didn't know that's what it was. I thought he was insane. My dad was a rough, tough guy. My dad drove truck out of Chicago. He's a union steward for the Teamsters. He worked for a guy named Jimmy Hoffa out of Michigan. My dad was one of his boys, and he wanted me to be a tough guy, and I wrote poetry. I didn't know it was poetry, by the way. You know, God gives each of us a gift. Our job is to find that gift. And my gift is with words. And when I was 9 years old, I was taken hostage by a pedophile. We didn't have that name back then. But he locked me in his coal bin in the basement and tortured me for 3 days, raped me, stuck metal objects in my body. And then on Monday morning before dawn, he threw me out in the street, told me he'd kill my family if I told anybody, and then he'd kill me. So I want to tell you newcomers something, the power of step 5. I never told another human being. They could not get me to tell who it was. And they would have known who it was if I'd have told them. But I didn't. I wasn't about to risk their life. I knew that at 9. And as time went by, I was nursing what I didn't know was a resentment. I don't know that word. Never heard that word till I got here. Rage, never heard that word till I got here. It's interesting. And I've been in therapy. I've been in every kind of psychodrama you can be treated in. And I always want to pay respects to those professionals who tried to help me. It's not their fault they couldn't help me. Because they tried everything they had. They tried pills, powders, potions, lotions, medication, shock treatments, electric, and insulin. They tried everything they had at their ready to treat what they thought was wrong with me. They thought I had a brain disease. They thought there was something wrong with me that way. And I believed them. I believed every diagnosis I got. Borderline personality disorder, Munchausen syndrome, factitious disorder syndrome, neurotic. That one I can be okay with. Any other neurotics in the room? Yes, you are. Raise your hands. I know you. You know, I can see you. I had a lot of problems mentally, emotionally, and I believe if you're raised in an alcoholic home, you're bound to have neurosis. You're bound to be a little bit jumpy. My dad would be playing poker with the boys, and he wouldn't think a second thought about pulling a gun out and putting it in the guy's face if he thought they were cheating. My dad liked to fight. He was a genuine, certified tough guy. And I wasn't. But I'm not a tough guy to this very day. But I learned how to get at people. And I didn't understand. I hadn't drank. I needed to drink when I was 4. The home I lived in was violent, had no sexual boundaries of any kind. It was dangerous. And I'm not blaming. I'm just reporting facts. There's no emotion behind what I'm telling you. I've already recovered from all the things I'm going to share with you. My sponsor taught me early on, do not go to a meeting and dump your problem on them. You call me first. Because they'll have a tendency to feel sorry for your ass. I won't. He proved it. He says, you bring that problem to me. We'll step our way through it, then you take that to the meeting. I didn't like that. Because I know how sympathetic some of you people can be. And I know how to prey on your sensibilities, right to my detriment and to yours. And I still to this day, recently, I'll tell about it later probably, maybe I won't, but I really recently had a challenge put in front of me. The first phone call I had was my sponsor. My sponsor is Tommy Marr in Florida. He's 61 years sober. He's such a good man. trust him with my life. I don't know that I need to call him, but I want to call him, which is conversely polar opposite of the early days when I needed to call him and didn't want to. But these days, 48 years of sobriety, one day at a time, this program works for every problem linked to this thing called alcoholism. How would I possibly know I had alcoholism with all these 21 psychiatric diagnoses, combinations of? I was medicated to the gills on a regular basis. And it seemed to help for a little while, but the madness would come back, and I didn't understand that. When I was 10 years old, my father ran his truck route was through the deep south. My dad was a racist and a bigot. I didn't have those words, but that's what my dad was. And he started taking me on runs with him because of what happened to me when I was 9, and he knew I was having trouble being around anybody. So he would throw me in the truck with him and go with him. And we made this one stop outside Mississippi, and it wasn't a farmyard, but it was a big lot, and they were burning crosses. And he welcomed me to his club. And they even had a little uniform for me. I thought it was cool. I asked my dad if I could wear it to school. It's okay to laugh. I didn't understand why I couldn't. I'm 10. I don't know what's going on. I'd like to tell you they didn't get me, but I can't tell you that. I will tell you it's been solved, and I'll tell you how in a little bit. See, you give me a Budweiser or two, and I'm not racist. It's the damnedest thing I've ever seen. My dad almost beat me to death because he caught me shooting pool with a black man. He says, my friends will kill you for what you're doing. And I'm shooting pool with a guy. I don't see black. I'm shooting pool. I'm having a good time. But sobered up, right back to where I was. It's an interesting thing. It's like I'm a Mr. Hyde looking for Dr. Jekyll. I'm the polar opposite of Dr. Bob. I'm a Bill W. type. I'm a total opposite of Bob. I had these isms before I ever drank. Bob didn't have those isms until he drank. And then when he sobered up, he didn't have them anymore. It was like he went back to his normal range of emotion. Me, I'm neurotic to begin with. You give me a few Budweisers, and I don't seem to be neurotic anymore. Sober me up, and I'm more neurotic than I was before I took the drink. And that was progressive. And I didn't know that till I came to you, got into the history of Bill Wilson's recovery, and discovered what he suffered from is what I suffered from. I'm not just an alcoholic. I have alcoholism. And I didn't know they were two different things completely. I did not know that. Did you know that? I didn't know that. I want to become an alcoholic before I go any further, so you might think I'm not just crazy. What did I do with my glasses? Why would I put them in my pocket? Okay. When I was new, my sponsor gave me and my new sponsee a big book. I was new. I had 2 hours of sobriety over a guy who I said I'd be his sponsor because it was my turn. If I have time, I'll tell that story. But he gave us a big book and he said, here, start at page 1, read. He says, when it tells you to do something, do it. If it says pray, pray. If it says write, write. And if you have trouble understanding that as you go along, you call me and I'll help you with it. And that's what me and Jimmy did. We read, we prayed when it said pray, we wrote when it said wrote. Right. I didn't think it was working. It's an interesting thing. Jimmy, who happens to be a Dr. Bob type, he got better almost right away. 6 months in, his emotions normalized. I witnessed it right in front of me. I got worse. Did anybody else get worse when they came to AA? Stopped drinking, and all of a sudden, this barrage of emotions hits me, and I don't know what to do with it. I don't have any tools for it. I'm a raging lunatic in AA. My first 5 years, I carried a weapon in the meeting at all times. I sponsored with my 357. I had this one sponsee who wouldn't do his 4-step. So I pulled him outside the club, pulled that 357 out, put it to his head, and pulled the hammer back. And I said, let's just end it here. You won't do your 4-step, you're going to die. Why don't we just get it out of the way? My sponsor called me that night. Demanded I bring my gun to him. By the way, he did do his 4-step. I don't recommend that as an approach. I was troubled. And I had well-meaning people in AA play doctor with me. They told me I should go see a psychiatrist. The big book says it's okay, they said. Go see a psychiatrist. You need to get back on medication. You have any idea how bad I wanted to do that? But I wanted to give AA a try. I wanted to give it a chance. Now, I'm just talking about me. Please don't leave here and say I told people to get off medication. I'm not. I'm telling you, I did. I come to find out that I've got a problem that those well-meaning people can't really diagnose. Recently, 5 weeks ago, I was diagnosed with lung cancer. And they come to find out it's caused by Agent Orange from Vietnam. I've been out of there 55 years. I saw, my doctor showed me in the CAT scan where the cancer was. He showed me the scarring in my lungs is what happens with Agent Orange. And because I saw it, I accepted it immediately. And I calmed down. He actually said to me, "You're strangely calm about all this. Are you sure you understand what's going on here?" And I said, "Doc, I've never had it so good. The best is yet to come." Now, that is not the response he would have got 49 years ago. I'd have milked self-pity for everything it's worth. But something happened. I wish they had some type of x-ray like that could show an alcoholic. We wouldn't lose so many newcomers. Because it was what I saw, I couldn't deny what I was looking at. And the acceptance was immediate. I'm not saying that for sympathy. I'm okay with it. I got doctors, I got God in my life, I've got you, and I've got the experience of many people through the years that have gone through what I'm about to enter into. It's not a big deal unless I make it a big deal. But I've got power today. I've got power as manifest in the 12 steps, the meetings, the fellowship, the God of my understanding. It's incredible. You know what I did for the first week following that diagnosis? My birthday was coming up. I was about to turn 48 when I got that news. I got plans. And so after I talked to him, I'm going to have the biopsy on Tuesday to find out what stage it is and what we can do. And you know what I'm doing? I'm not thinking about it. You know what you do when you don't know what to think? Don't. I've been taught in Alcoholics Anonymous, we live this one day at a time. No matter what comes our way, we live this one day at a time. And that God's in charge. It's already manifest, whatever it is. My job is to just keep doing what I'm doing, help God's kids as best I can. And do it without a drink. And I'm going to do it without any pills, powders, potions, or lotions to the ability that I can do that. I'm empowered today. I was powerless when I got here. I'm still powerless over alcohol. I can't take one drink, and the key word is safely. And do you know what? To this moment in time, I have not thought about drinking as a relief. I have not thought about drinking at any measure of what I'm experiencing in my life. I get to be an example for my sponsees because I know they're watching me. I know they are. I love them and they love me. And so I want to teach them that we can watch. You know, how many of you remember Jerry Lewis and the Muscular Dystrophy Telethon? I watched that because of one song, You Never Walk Alone. You never have to walk alone. That could be our theme song, couldn't it? We are the original Me Too movement. How many of us hear a speaker like me share and you go like this? Me too. That's when you become an alcoholic. Me too. So my sponsor asked me to read the first 4 chapters of the big book. And he says, when you identify with something, mark it, and we'll talk about it. So I went through the first 4 chapters, the doctor's opinion, chapters 1, 2, and 3. And I said, Barney, I don't identify with this stuff. He says, what? I said, no. And I said, the only thing I identify with is where Dr. Silkworth in the doctor's opinion talked about the psychopath type. but there's only a sentence. I got more diagnoses that last longer than that. And I read Bill's story. I don't relate with Bill. He says, what? I said, I don't relate with Bill. Bill was a lieutenant in the Army. I was a boatswain mate in the Navy. Where are you going?
Say goodnight to my daughter.
Okay. Tell her I said hi. That's the best excuse I've heard yet. That's a good one. Now, what was I saying?
Navy.
I was a boatswain mate in the Navy. I don't relate. He drank whiskey. I drank beer. I don't relate. He drank in the morning. I've never drank in the morning one time. Now, I've drank into the morning, but I've never had a morning drink. My sponsor looked at me like people look at me. He said, okay, read chapter 4. I said, okay. So I opened it up, went to chapter 4, and I went just like this. I said, Barney, I can't read this. He says, why not? I said, the title. He says, what about the title? It's We Agnostics. He says, I know. So what? I said, well, I can't read that. Why? Because I'm a Christian. So what? I said, if I read a chapter or a book or anything called We Agnostics, Jesus is going to question my sincerity. He looks at me and he says, you're a special kind of stupid, ain't you? And then he did what we do to the newcomers. He ground me down. Every time he saw me, you read it yet? You read it yet? You read it yet? So like we do with the 4-step. You wrote it yet? You wrote it yet? You wrote it yet? Alex, you done yet? We grind them until they do it or die, one or the other. And he did. He ground me. And then he got his other sponsors in on it. Every time they saw me, I was ready to punch them out. Got so sick of hearing it, I finally read chapter 4. And who would think that Bill hid what makes me alcoholic in one sentence in chapter 4? And if he'd have labeled it that, it wouldn't have meant nothing to me. But the third sentence, I'm going to put it in the first person. If when I honestly want to, do I find I cannot quit drinking entirely? There's so many times secretly I wanted to quit drinking. I wanted to quit drinking to stay in the Navy. They wanted me to go to treatment because I've got alcoholism. And I said, no, I only drink beer. Okay, so I forgot to get on the boat before you left. That could happen to anybody. So rather than make the Navy a career like I wanted to, I accepted the discharge rather than go to treatment because I'm not an alcoholic. I believed it to my core. I was an alcoholic. I promised my wife I'd quit drinking. I wanted to please her. There's many times I wanted to quit drinking, but I didn't understand that. And it was baffling to me because ethanol alcohol is not addictive by nature. I want you to hear that. Scientifically, alcohol is not addictive by nature. You can develop a bodily and mental dependency on it, but you got to drink a lot and hard for quite a while to develop that dependency. So I couldn't understand why. Hi. Was she okay? Okay. I didn't understand. I wish I didn't know what I know. It baffled me. I should just be depressed. And I'm okay with that because I'm already depressed. But alcohol does something for me. It livens me up. It uplifts me. It acts like a stimulant. It shouldn't. Why would I quit? That's the only time I feel good about myself. Or if when drinking, do I have little control of the amount I take? That's a hard test. Or if when drinking, do I have little control of the amount I take? I know once I take a drink, I can't predict what I'm going to do or where I'm going to go. So that's 2 yeses. There's no more. There's not 18 more questions here. Then it says, you are probably alcoholic. I went like this. Whew, that was close. Because I know what probably means. Almost. Not quite. And then it says something really bizarre. If that be the case, I may be suffering from an illness, which only a spiritual experience may conquer. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no disease known to science that AA can treat. That I know for a fact. AA is not designed to treat disease of any kind. And scientifically, the disease component is arrested fully upon cessation of drinking and the obsession being lifted. I needed to know that. I can't live with something in my life hovering over me. That's why I've taken this diagnosis for what it is, and I'm going to deal with it straight ahead. Because I can't take the fear of something coming to get me. And now, knowing that the disease is arrested scientifically, once I stop drinking, I know it isn't getting anything done with me in my sobriety. My disease doesn't make me be an asshole. I do. My disease isn't talking to me. I am. Unless I take full responsibility for my behavior, my thoughts, and my actions, the chances of my recovery are slim. That might be why we have a less than 5% success rate right now. Have you seen that guy on YouTube? He's got a pretty good pitch. He's selling his own program, his book. He says, why would you go to a program that promises you less than 10% chance at recovery? My method's 50 or better. He's using our statistic. He's brilliant. He's making all kinds of money. I'm not giving an opinion. I'm just telling you what I know. So why is it we have a less than 5% success rate? I believe it's in how it works. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves this simple program. Now, you and I, if you've been around a while, you know what our real success rate is, don't you? Our real success rate is 75% plus, as written in the first foreword to the second edition of the Big Book. Of those who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 25% got sober after some relapses, and then Bill was generous and optimistic, and of the remainder who stayed on with us, their lives improved. Which means if you have a relapse, come on back. There's no shame in that. Relapse happens. It's not part of the recovery program, but relapse happens. I've been sober since the day I raised my hand on November 8, 1977, the first time in my life, said, my name's Wayne, I'm an alcoholic. From that day to this, I've had no pills, powders, potions, or lotions, no alcohol, and I have tried to live this life one day at a time as best I can. I like to be funny. I don't want to be so serious tonight. I don't even think there's any newcomers, is there? Any newcomers? Oh, there are. Oh, good. I'm talking to you. We know something you don't know, by the way. No offense. Can you hear me out there? Yeah. We know something you don't know. You want to know what it is? Yeah. We know you don't know. No offense. That's good news, because if we knew what you know, we'd be in trouble. Right? So get yourself a sponsor if you don't have one. Get in this book. I'm not the authority. This is. Our success rate is based on one condition, of those who came to AA and really tried. And really tried is subjective, isn't it? See, my idea of really trying is one meeting a month. You pick up your own damn chair. You ain't broke. Go wash your own cup. I'll wash mine. You wash yours. That's my idea of really trying. I had no idea that my life was on the line. And so I'm alcoholic. I've got those two symptoms right there. When I honestly want to, I can't quit entirely. And once I start to drink, I can't control it. That's what makes me alcoholic. But I want to talk about what alcoholism. I didn't know there was a difference, folks. I have alcoholism. That ism thing. How many of us have heard about the ism? We've heard the acronyms, right? I sponsor myself. Incredibly short memory. In search of myself. But the one that's effective is in the Big Book. It's internal spiritual maladjustment. To be maladjusted to the spiritual life. In full flight from the great reality. And because of that, I became an outright mental defective. I believe I was born with a broken spirit. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. And then life compounded the fracture. Then I came into this program and surrendered. I was compliant at first. It's a process, isn't it? I was compliant at first. It took me a few 24 hours to surrender to this thing one day at a time. I had effective sponsorship. I had an effective home group. And I didn't know I needed that. While those well-meaning, well-intentioned people in AA that told me to go see a doctor and get medicated, you see, they can't see my real problem. The doctors that were trying to help me couldn't see my real problem. The psychiatrists couldn't see my real problem because, you see, they can't study the human spirit. They don't have an x-ray. There's no x-ray for the human spirit. There's no blood test for the human spirit to find if I've got a broken spirit, or if I have a spiritual deficiency, or if I'm separated from the needed power to live. You know how I found it? In here when you guys tell your stories. That's how I caught this thing. You guys telling your drinking stories. If I'd have came here and heard nothing but a drunkalog or a drugalog, I wouldn't be here. Because I don't relate to drugs. I don't relate to a lot of things. And if we focus on those things, a lot of alcoholics aren't going to make it. I diagnosed myself by stories you told about yourself. Because when you're talking about you, I'm willing to look at me. But if you start pointing the finger at me and lecturing, I'm not interested in the thing you say. Thank you. So I had a sponsor who told me his story over and over and over again. I got sober back in the day when it was always about alcoholism. It was always about drinking. We had an honest chance to identify with the drinking problem. I've heard many people say alcohol wasn't their problem, it was a solution. Now, to be fair, I understand what they're implying, but in my feeble mind when I was new, my thought was, if alcohol wasn't a problem, what the hell are you doing here? I was saying that to myself, basically. I had a real problem with alcohol. When you can't control it, and when I can't control the amount that I take, when I can't quit and stay quit, that is a problem. The problem is, it was a problematic solution. That's what it was for me, a problematic solution. So I need a solution for that. And I need a higher power. I need a relationship with that power. And I get that relationship here. So I want to talk about sponsorship. Sponsor is not in the big book. A lot of people use that to not have a sponsor. Do you know that? Who knows why sponsor is not in the big book?
There was nobody there yet.
Nope. There's one reason why sponsor did not appear in the big book. They had sponsors right away. Here's why. We didn't have a self-supporting tradition yet. So if you sponsored me and you put me in Towns Hospital, you took responsibility for my bill. That was a sponsor. And so that's why Bill did not put sponsor in the big book. By the time the 12 and 12 was published, the word sponsor was acceptable because we had the self-supporting tradition. And now sponsor appears. We had sponsorship before the big book came out. But they didn't call it that. They called it working with others. Because not everybody could afford to sponsor a newcomer. Isn't that brilliant? And so when I read the big book, I always tell that story so that they understand that's why sponsor's not in the book. And another one that I want to talk about, I hear a lot of people quote Part B. They usually say no human power. How many of you have heard that? No human power? But they don't say probably. Probably no human power. Because that was key to my recovery. Probably no human power. Did you know that Bill was talking about the human powers of medicine? Psychiatry, psychology, sociology, theology, pharmacology, and talk therapy. That's the human powers Bill was talking about. That those human powers could relieve us of a lot of things, but they couldn't relieve us of our alcoholism. But that God could and would if he were sought. This better be a spiritual problem, or why would we have that? And that all began to make sense to me, because why would I turn my will? Why do I got to have a God? My mom had lung cancer. Nobody told her to get God or have a spiritual experience. My dad was a diabetic on top of alcoholism. Nobody told him that he had to have God, a spiritual experience to conquer it. This is a spiritual malady. this internal spiritual maladjustment. I was dying in AA because I had a misunderstanding. I allowed them out there to convince me I had what they were talking about instead of what we were talking about. I didn't know I had a soul sickness. I didn't know that was my entire problem. When I was 18 days sober, I had the privilege of hearing Chuck C. talk at a convention my sponsor drugged me to, and I was at his table. And he knew he had a goof on his hands. I'm sitting there with 4 teeth in my head, an unmanageable tongue. I had no teeth to stop it. Elsa was sitting on his right, and Dr. Kildare came in and came over and sat with Chuck, and I said, there's Dr. Kildare. I didn't know it was Chuck's son. What would I know about that? And he's got this funky laugh. Tee-hee. So he said, kid, let me show you my problem. Gets a napkin out and draws a line down the middle of the napkin. He said, what's that? I said, it's a line. He goes, tee. No, that's just your perception. Now I think he's toying with me. And then he draws a big circle on the right side of that napkin. He says, what's that? And I'm thinking, well, that ain't a line. I'm not sure what that is. So I said, is it a circle? He goes, no, that's just your perception. And then he drew a stick figure on the left side. He said, who's that? And I'm thinking, if he says me, I'm knocking this buzzard out of his chair. And he writes Chuck C on the top. And I said, I don't get it. He says, that line represents conscious separation. That circle represents God, good, love. And he put a bunch of dots inside, and that's all God's kids. And this is Chuck, separated from God and all that is God. He says, I have one problem in life. He didn't say I did. He said he did. He says, I have one problem in life, only one. Conscious separation from my loving Father God. And every problem I ever have and have had stems from that conscious separation. And then he turned his attention to Elsa. And I snatched that, I don't know why, but I snatched that napkin up and put it in my first big book. It's still there. Because it came back around and meant something to me later when I woke up. And now I can tell you that my only problem in life is conscious and unconscious separation from the needed power to live. A loving God of my understanding. It's important to know that I have a spiritual malady. You know, Bill considered Reverend Sam Shoemaker a co-founder of AA. That's where we got the soul sickness, was from Reverend Sam Shoemaker. He says, Bill, I think your people have a soul sickness about them. And that's what drives them to drink. I'm glad I found that history. Because I thought I had a drinking problem in that sense. Turns out my problem is trying to depend on alcohol to alter my perception of reality. So I need a substitute for that. And I have that substitute right here, right now. And I want to go back to part B for just a minute. Here's my proof. Do you know that when I'm out by myself, running on self-will, I'm a human power. And I'm going to fail. But when I'm sitting here talking to Keith, maybe my friend Pebbles, my sponsees, when we start talking about God and AA, I cease to be a human power at that point, and we become spiritual powers. I believe that's the reason why we can gain the confidence of another sick and suffering alcoholic before any expert out there can, is because we talk the same language of the heart. I can share my experience with them, maybe talk about drinking in between stories, tell them about what I went through, how I recovered in Alcoholics Anonymous. And what I got, 3 minutes left? 4?
10.
Which? 3. He's giving me 20. So. Real quickly, how many of you know the story of Bill's failure the first 6 months of his sobriety? He failed to sober anybody up. One guy hung himself in Bill's house, by the way. And Bill was frustrated by that. Annie, or Lois, saved the day when she said, well, Bill, you're sober. I can hear the snarkiness in the voice. Saved our lives. So Bill went back to Dr. Silkworth, says, Bill, or Silky, what am I doing wrong? That was his nickname, Silky. Silky, what am I doing wrong? He said, well, tell me what you tell him. Well, I tell him about how I got into Towns Hospital for my third treatment. I tell him about my white light experience at Towns Hospital. I talked to him about how God, and he stopped him. He said, why are you doing that? I'd drink too. White light, you got a Ouija board too? By the way, he did. He says, why are you doing that, Bill? That's not what I did with you. He says, Bill, I gave you the medical estimate. I saw your desperation rise as I was giving you the hopelessness of yourself with the allergy and the obsession. That is what made you have that white light experience. You were so desperate. So you're talking about that end of it instead of what made it happen, in my opinion. He says, why don't you give them that first and then tell them the solution you found? His next candidate was Dr. Bob. And he responded to the medical estimate. You see, he already had God. He'd been in the Oxford group for 3 years. He couldn't get sober in the Oxford group. But after that conversation with Bill, he went to a doctor's convention, got drunk, came back, had to do a surgery, an emergency surgery. So Bill gave him his last 2 bottles of beer to steady his nerves. And then Bob never had another drink from that day to the day he died in 1950. Because he got the medical estimate first and then the solution. Problem, solution, action, result. That's how Joe and Charlie would tell you they laid out the big book. Problem, solution, action, result. So I'm going to wrap it up. For those of you that are new, I hope you keep coming. If you don't like what I said, there'll be another speaker here next week. It's okay. If you resent me, that's good too. It'll give you something to work on. But AA works. I believe there's no failure here. There's only failure on my part not to apply the principles in my life on a daily basis. And because of that, you know, it's easy to be sober and happy when everything's going right. But I'm in a different part of my life right now, and I absolutely refuse to feel sorry for myself. I absolutely refuse to blame. It is what it is. And I'm going to face that challenge that I'm in today, and I'm going to win. Either way, I'm going to win. Because when I told that doctor what I told him, it was true then, and knowing what I'm facing, it's true today. I've never had it so good. And the best is yet to come. Thank you.